Welcome, everybody. Welcome to We Chats, a free webinar for people with diabetes, where we bring the experts to you. My name is Will, and I'm a diabetes specialist dietitian. And here at We Chats, we love having fun, informal conversations where we combine the diabetes research, the experience of people living with diabetes, and the expertise of people working in diabetes. Welcome to this episode where we're chatting about diabetes in the Caribbean community. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have our speaker with us today. Ellouise Simpson is a dietitian and I would say a powerhouse in dietetics. So welcome, Ellouise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Hi, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I know it's a nice sunny day. It's one of those things like when you have clinic, when it's really sunny, you might not get many attendees. When it's really cold, you might not get many attendees. So, you have to find that middle ground. So thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to having, a relaxed conversation about diabetes, especially within my community.
Excellent, thank you. So, Ellouise,
Mhm.
for people who may have not have met you before or heard about you, maybe people listening to the webinar, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a mummy. And I say that because I think it's important. I think it really navigates how I am as a dietitian. So I'm a mummy to five children, and then I'd say I'm a dietitian. Secondly, I've been doing dietetics now for goodness me, coming up to 10 years actually. Yeah, coming up to 10 years. But before I became a dietitian, I'd always wanted to be a diabetes dietitian. So I guess I was fortunate because I knew my calling before I even started. Um, so once I qualified as a dietitian, I automatically transcended straight into diabetes, and that was on the back of my dissertation and it being published. And I was, fortunate enough to go straight into the specialist area that I wanted to be in. So yeah, I've been doing diabetes for quite some time now. Mm.
So you've been working for a decade in diabetes,
Yeah,
and you went straight into it, which is fantastic.
yeah,
And for non-dietitians out there, it's very unique. But you knew your passion by the
yeah,
sounds of it.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, that passion was ignited from my family.
Mm,
You're going to church, and lots of the ladies that were I was surrounded by had type 2 diabetes, but it was so casual. And it used to get me thinking, how can a condition that I didn't know that much about at the time, but
mm,
be taken and looked after in such a casual fashion? And then as I
mm.
started to do some research about it, it kind of raised my eyebrows, and I thought, this isn't a casual condition. This is something that we really need to um, do something about and really look after. So I used to do events at my church and in my community. I used to be a runner years ago, so I was always interested in athletics and sports and nutrition and things of that nature. So it all came together really nicely. And my goal was always that once I qualify as a dietitian, I'm gonna sort all these ladies out at my church. I'm gonna fix them. Yeah, obviously that's not the case. Um, but as a consequence, I have been able to go back, give back, and support so many people along their journey who have type 2 diabetes, and just provide that gap between, their clinical appointments where they're sort of on their P's and Q's and, they're talking the Queen's English sort of scenario and not really asking the genuine questions that they want to ask, to seeing me, sitting down with me where we can have an informal conversation. You can talk in your mother's tongue. We can just, go through it and they feel really comfortable. And together, with amalgamation of the medical model and also the holistic model, we've been able to see some good outcomes. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So you knew before you went, before you started your dietetic training, you knew
Ah,
where you wanted to be, and
most
it
definitely.
sounds like it's a real passion, and now you're having these conversations with people in your community about diabetes in a very different way, it sounds like.
Yeah, because you know, I work in the NHS, so I manage clinics and I run renal and diabetes clinics and gestational diabetes clinics and things like that. But doing it in your community is it's so different because they don't want the Eloise that's at work. They want just the Eloise that they see, the girl that looks like them, sort of scenario. And we can just sit and we can have conversations. Secondly, I think this leads us nicely into today's chat that we're going to have, is all to do with our culture. So, if you go to research, it talks about if you're from a Black and African Caribbean, you're more likely to have a stroke. You're more likely to have type 2 diabetes. You're more likely to be obese, and the list and the list and the list goes on. However, we don't have to conform to those numbers because a lot of the times there are things that we can do. And I guess there is that gap, isn't there? There is that gap between the formal, how can I put it, the formal care that you receive from the healthcare, which is definitely needed, but also being comfortable and relaxed and confident in speaking to somebody who you feel understands you. Does that make sense? As I said, my passion has come a long, long way. I would say now it's transcended from just passion to wanting to make a difference, wanting to really see better outcomes now. I'm at an age now as well where a lot of my friends that I grew up with, maybe from school, are now starting to contact me to say, hey, I've been to the doctors and they've said I've got pre-diabetes or I've got type 2 diabetes, how can you support? And that's a new thing. That's new, only come along in the last year. So that is telling me a lot. Obviously age has an impact. We age, our organs age. There's not much we can do about the aging process. If I could invent a pill, then I think I would be a very rich woman, but I can't.
I would be buying that.
So as we age, our pancreas is aging, our liver is aging. So there's, it comes at a cost, doesn't it? But that doesn't mean, because mom or auntie or someone else in your family has type 2 diabetes, you're necessarily going to get type 2 diabetes. So that's kind of where I sort of position myself, right in that middle slot there.
Excellent. And I think, you're touching on something that's really important for any type of healthcare. When we access healthcare, we need to be confident, we need to be comfortable, we need to feel heard and valued. We're not a number, we're not a statistic, we're not just another person in the revolving door of clinic. We need to have that connection. It's so important for us to be able to absorb information and learn and change.
I know. I think it can be quite difficult. So if I put on my NHS hat now while we're talking, you're in clinic and you have a selective amount of time to see a patient. And I mean, GPs have less time than us. We have much more time. But I did my FCP and my non-medical prescribing. So I'll be making more decisions than I used to make when I first qualified. However, I still feel fortunate that we have more time to be able to sit and speak to someone. So when I do get someone from my community say, oh, I went to the doctors and they were very blasé, and before you know it, they told me I got type 2 diabetes, and then I blinked and the consultation was over. I do take in consideration that how much can you fit in to a 10, 15, 20-minute consultation when you're trying to explain all the different macros, what's having an impact on your diabetes, or do you have to just sort of use the medical model and sort of say, but you need metformin, it's not working for you, we need to titrate it, or we need to put you onto something new. So I think it takes two. It takes two approaches to really support somebody, even three actually, because thinking about exercise, but it takes many approaches, that's probably a better term, to support somebody who's got pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, because it's all about lifestyle, isn't it? It's not just if you do A and you do B, you're going to get the outcome you want. know, so yeah.
So, you're having lots of conversations with
Mm,
lots of people in your community, in different settings, and they're getting NHS Eloise, they're getting home Eloise, they're getting
mm.
friend Eloise. What are the what are sort of some of the common threads that are coming through in these conversations that you're having?
Well, if we start from the start, a lot of the time is that someone doesn't know that they were on the cusp of, the HbA1c was elevated, and they had pre-diabetes, and then they get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and they said, well, if I knew my HbA1c or my blood works were high or my sugar was high, however you want to phrase it, maybe I could have done something about it. And I know that that's an area which is difficult to maybe manage in a clinical setting because we do have the prevention program, don't we, where people can go. And I would always advocate, if you are pre-diabetic and you've been signposted to do it, try and take some time out and see if you can just attend the course, because you might take a nugget away where you're thinking, right, I can make these changes, and it supports you. And research tells us, as you're going to know, that if we can reduce that HbA1c at an earlier stage, we're going to get better outcomes rather than developing type 2 diabetes and then trying to work our way backwards. So a lot of the time is that they just didn't know.
Mm.
They didn't know. And I know at the end we're going to talk about my 5 top tips of how to support someone. Slightly touching on that, I always say to people, try and take control of your health. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know that we have the National Health Service here to support us when we need to. However, you know, if you can invest some time into doing a little bit of extra reading, I mean, the NHS website is great, easy reading, isn't it? It tells you great information about what is diabetes, what is this medication, and so on and so forth. So pay some attention, not being, sharp with my words there, but pay attention. Go home and try and do a little bit of research on, what you've been diagnosed and how you can support yourself. Well, I've just said that, and it's just made me think. When I say do some research, don't chat GPT. Don't go on a lot of the forums, because if you do, you're going to be having, I don't know, chia seed pudding, or I don't know, cucumber water or something. I'm not here to advocate those things.
Mhm.
I want us to really think about the holistic and practical steps that we can do to support somebody who's got diabetes or developing diabetes. So someone saying that they didn't know that their HbA1c. That's one of the common comments that I hear, and it's heartbreaking, isn't it, if you think about it? Because you think, oh goodness, if we could have caught this a little bit earlier. But it's not the end of the road. If you have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, we can still make so much changes. You know, where we can push that number back and put you into remission. What are the other things? Not understand.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was just thinking, for people listening, just in case they don't know, so the HbA1c, if it's between 42 and 47,
Mm,
that's what would be diagnosed as pre-diabetes.
yeah,
And then two measurements above 48, usually about 6 weeks after each other, would be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes.
yeah,
Um, so I thought I'd just get in there since we
yeah,
are
of course.
talking about the importance of
Yeah,
awareness. But please go on. What are the other
yeah,
common
yeah. So not,
things
so
that you
not,
talk
so
about?
not knowing. That's the first one, and then also the medication. So, I guess I'm laughing because it just brings me back to conversations that you have with patients in regards to Manjaro. Yeah, so I'm going to marry the two. So when you've been put on a medication, that is not the golden pill that is going to sort out all your problems. So if you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and you're not taking diet and lifestyle approach, because it's a stepped approach, but diet and lifestyle, and then you've got first line and so on. So if you've been put on metformin, I want you to use that as as just a starting block. So if you think about it, I'm sitting on a chair now and the chair has 4 legs. Okay. So metformin is one leg of that chair. So it's not giving you full support, but it's one leg just giving you a little support. You still have to put in the rest. So you've got diet, you've got exercise, and then you've also got mindset to help you behavior change, to help you really get them numbers down. And again, it could just be one of those things, isn't it? You go into clinic, there's only a small amount of time. You've left, you've been told you've got type 2 diabetes and you've got a prescription for metformin. And just feel confident to ask the questions, what is this? Why have I been prescribed it? It might sound simple, but the answer is going to help you to understand the why. And if you understand the why, it really makes a really big difference. Yeah.
Why is so powerful, isn't it?
So
Wow. If I think if we knew more of the why in so many things,
I know.
it I'd be getting up out of bed a lot quicker, probably.
It's like we have to revert into child mode. Like I've got a 5-year-old and everything's why? Why? Why did you tell me to do this? Why did you? And you have to sort of like just take a breath and think, oh my God, we're on our third why now. But, by answering the why, it really helps them to understand why they've been asked to do something. Why, and it's the same with your health. Why? Why have I been given this? Why have I been diagnosed? And if the clinician has time, can go through a little bit about, what may have happened, or looking at your bloods can help support. It could be driven from a weight perspective. It could be driven from a perspective of, your age. You come to a certain age and, you've got so much older and everything's just not working the same way. It could be driven from a muscle mass perspective. Because you could have, you could be someone who's, I don't know, let's have say 90 kg. And when they were younger, that 90 kg was formulated, their anthropometrics looked very different, does that make sense? So they were firm. As they get older, they still could be the same weight, but now a lot of that muscle has been replaced with fat mass. Yeah, again, that's going to have now an impact on the development of type 2 diabetes. So understanding your why makes so much difference. Yeah.
And I love that chair analogy as well. That is fantastic. The medications are just one part. They're one leg of the chair.
Yes.
Leg still needs other leg. The chair still needs other legs.
Yeah, unless you've got the skill just to balance,
And with that why, I mean, I know from speaking to some people with diabetes, and maybe younger people, but all ages really, sometimes there's a little bit of fear in that why, not asking why because I can't handle the answer.
Very true.
Do you think some of that is potentially coming through sometimes?
And I think that's the case for a lot of people. When you get to the age of 40 and you can have, your MOT at your doctor's, a lot of people say, oh, it came on my birthday. It was like a 40-year-old birthday present. And, people put it off. They put it off because there's that worry that, maybe I'm not the size that I wanted to be, or maybe I know that some symptoms are starting to creep in. And yes, I really do appreciate it. It can be difficult to sort of overcome those fears and say, right, let me go and get an answer. Let me go and get some results. However, the longer you put it off, imagine if you do have type 2 diabetes and you are putting it off, the complications that could be developing in the background, it gets to a point where some of them are irreversible. And I think if a lot of people understood that why, then they would be like, okay, I don't really want to go, but I better go because, maybe the results couldn't push me in the direction that I need to go in. However, it's easier said than done. I can sit here with you. I mean, you can sit and have a conversation. I know that it's not that simple. And if you do have fears and anxieties around it, just reaching out and speaking to somebody about it, because sometimes just that art of communication with someone, just that art of having a conversation can make you feel a little bit more at ease. Not necessarily that you're going to get the results that you want, but you could feel a little bit more at ease, and you could go ahead and, go and get your results. That leads me nicely into sort of talking about the NHS app. So I
Oh,
normally,
yeah.
yeah, I normally suggest to, my patients, or if I'm working in the community, more so if I'm working in the community actually,
Mm,
download the app. Go to your
mhm,
GP and get your health record connected to it, and that's accountability now. Yeah, because now you're taking control. You can log in. You can see your results. You may not understand all your results, but you're now making those steps to understand a little bit more about your health, and then that might generate additional questions. Yeah.
and we all got so familiar with the NHS app during COVID, didn't we? We all had our COVID passport.
Mm,
We were we were going abroad as soon as we could. Um, but and it's kind of almost gone away a little bit because it's not
yeah,
so needed. But I was speaking to my friend recently, and they'd been to the GP, and I said, "Oh, what are your blood test results?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know." And I was like, "Let's. This will
yeah,
take 2 minutes. We can get these easy."
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they were there.
Yeah, I do wonder, obviously, because I work in healthcare just like yourself, there's that interest, isn't there? We're interested in things. We see these results all day with other people. You want to know what yours are. So sometimes I have to step back and try and step out of that character, when I'm talking to friends and family who work in something totally different from healthcare, who don't really have that much interest. And how can you sort of package this in a way where they are interested, and they do want to make these steps to sort of take an accountability in regards to their own healthcare, their own health. Because within the diabetes centre that I work in, we are moving towards more patients taking more autonomy over their care. And for some people, that works really well. And for some people, it's sort of like the green card to just not contact us at all.
Yeah.
So I think that there has to be a middle ground.
Mm,
Yes, it's going to work for some, but it's not going to work for others. So getting the NHS app, I know for some people, it might spur them on. They sit there with a cup of tea, having a bit of a read. Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? And for some people, it's just like reading another language, and I'm just not interested in that. So when I do consultations, or I speak to people within my church, or do community events, I would have examples of what the app looks like, what the results are, and just a brief, like one sentence of, oh, this use and ease, this is what this is,
mm,
HbA1c, this is what this is,
mhm.
just so it's not alien to someone when they're going on there. Yeah.
That's a fantastic idea. I love that. It's really good. But Eloise, it wouldn't be right if two dietitians got together and we
Mhm.
didn't talk about food.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, when you're working with the Caribbean
Yeah.
community, what food conversations are coming up most commonly?
Yeah. So the start of a food conversation always brings a smile. It always brings a smile because everyone loves food. Food is everything. Food is, if you go to a baby blessings, food. A birthday party, it's food. A funeral, it's food. A gathering, it's food. Food is absolutely everything, and I think that's really that's really good. It's really nice. It brings people together, and we don't ever want to lose that. When I tell people I'm a dietitian, it's like, oh, the dietitian, and I'm like, no, no, no. I love food just as much as you, and the important thing is you understanding, you know, the different food groups, and which ones will have an impact on your blood sugars. Which doesn't mean you can't eat them, yeah. But if we now have an understanding of what has an impact on your blood sugars, what's driving someone to have diabetes, like I said before. So is it more to do with the weight? Is it more to do with, the carbohydrate, which converts to glucose, sugar? Is it that intake? Is that, hence why I say, you have to have these conversations over time. One consultation really doesn't really work. It's more to do with having constant conversations. Yeah, food. We definitely need to talk about it. Talk
Do
about
you ever find people are when they think about their own food,
Mm.
are they are there any big surprises that come up when we start thinking about, okay, it's diabetes, here are the
Mm.
options, here's what we're thinking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
What are people getting surprised about?
People are getting surprised about carbohydrates, the amount of carbohydrate that's on their plate. Because if we take a typical, I'm Caribbean, so I'll use Caribbean as an example. Our meals, so a typical Sunday dinner, you're gonna have rice and peas, so that's a carbohydrate. Okay, then you're gonna have some plantain, depending on how you say it. Again, you've got carbohydrates. You might have some fried dumpling. You might have some festivals. Festivals have more sugar in than dumplings, but both of them, again, flour are still a carbohydrate. Then you're going to have like a little showcase of a little salad, just a little showcase, nothing major. Yeah.
Mm,
Which is the fiber we're now missing out on, which has a positive impact on managing your blood sugars. So really, and then you've got your meat, whatever your meat source is going to be. Um, so it's that understanding of when you look down at your plate, can you identify the different food groups? And if you can, then that's going to help you to be able to, manage the portions a little bit better. And without that mindset, it's just, oh, I like this, I like that. I'm going to have, whatever I want. And before you know it, you've eaten and you get that, after meal slump. And you think, oh, when really, them blood sugars are now they're peaking. They're reaching for the sky,
mm,
and we're not doing anything to bring them down either. Um, so it's not the food. It's not the Caribbean or the African food, which a lot of the time gets the rap. This food um, is demonized or the culprit of someone. It's really what you eat. So a prime example: if I work with someone from my community,
mm,
what happens is, well, this is what I find they predominantly go towards right. I'm going to have quinoa, or I'm now going to have a salad, or I'm going to, and their cultural food starts to get pushed out the way. Yeah, because I guess the examples maybe what they see online, what they see on TV, what they've been told
mm,
is not culturally appropriate. When really you
mm,
can still have all of your cultural foods, but now it's just moderation. Yeah, it might mean if you want a Jamaican patty, it might mean, well, I'm going to share it and I'm going to have some
mm,
salad with that rather than having two, or I'm going to have one and I'm going to have some salad with that and call that a meal. Because you've got your pastry, you've got a little bit of meat. It's not going to be an adequate protein intake, to be honest. But we can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. We've got to have that stepped approach and work to where we want. Work towards where we want to be. Can't get my words out.
and not every meal has to be perfect, but
No.
actually every meal, well, not every meal, but like as
Mm,
you mentioned, food is an integral part of life.
mm,
It's those milestones where everybody gets together. It's a cornerstone of community.
mm,
And if that food isn't representing the community, if it's, because I remember going along to family functions
mm.
as a child and seeing the food, and then I would say, right, okay, well, this is what I want to make.
Okay.
It's passing on the recipes, it's passing on the traditions,
Yeah.
it's and that happens in every community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and diabetes shouldn't change that.
Right.
It shouldn't take those foods away. Um,
Yeah. But it might need to be more of a conversation as well. Because when you were just saying that, it just made me think. So, say you have a family, maybe one, two, or three people do have diabetes. Sort of overcoming that fear and letting the family know, and everyone can make steps to make better choices to support that person and also to support themselves. Now that doesn't mean, you know Uncle Freddie's got diabetes and now you're going to decide, right, oh, you shouldn't be eating that because you've got diabetes. No, that helps nobody. It absolutely helps nobody. um, but it could mean that we're now all gathering that information, being able to look down at our food and identify, what the food groups are, and having a balanced meal. And I know some of these are buzzwords and they're used consistently, but it is important that our meals are balanced. Even if you don't have diabetes, if you think about it, you know, ensuring that your meals are balanced, it means that you're going to get the adequate amount of healthy whole grain carbs, your protein for muscle building, maintenance, and then also we're going to get the fiber, we're going to get our vegetables and nutrients. So that's supporting the whole family. It's taking a whole family approach. I guess that also leads me on to creating, because we have those traditions that we hand down from generation to generation. Like, how do you make this meal, or how do you make that meal? How about layering that with some healthy tips that go with them? Yeah. So, for example, if someone's going to make a roast chicken, yeah, rather than maybe browning the skin off with oil, it could be that we now use the grill and we brown it, using the grill, and then we cover it and we put it in the oven, and that becomes a family tradition. You get what I mean? And I know it might sound simple, but it makes such a difference, because when you see your mum cooking or your nan cooking, you take those tips and you run with them, and then you teach the next generation of how to do something. So, what drinks are put on the table? Are the drinks that are traditionally put on the table at events, are they always, really heavy in sugar, or could we start making some adjustments to that? So things like that. So just changing a little bit of the tradition, just a little bit, just to ensure that the generations that come after us are having healthy meal choices and options, and we can start reducing that prevalence of diabetes.
I love that. That it's about everyone. Like I
Yeah,
said, it's not just Uncle Freddie. It's everyone around Uncle Freddie.
exactly.
There's benefit for everybody
Mm,
in eating healthy, balanced diets,
yeah,
and we don't need to get rid of food,
yeah,
but sometimes it is a simple cooking practice and a
yeah.
preparation practice. When the shopping list gets made,
Mm,
the sugar-free drinks go on.
mm,
Um,
definitely. I mean, I'm nodding, but I wish I could do a shopping list. I am terrible. I start a shopping list and I get to the store and oh, that looks good, that looks good, that's good. And I'm a dietitian, but there's just something about shopping lists that I don't know. I always go off.
it, do you? Well, so this is interesting now. Now I'm going to be nosy.
Go
So
on.
when it comes to the kitchen,
Yeah.
are you going with the flow? Are you sort of like feeling it out, or are you following a recipe?
Oh no, never. No, don't. Yeah, don't follow a recipe at all. But going back to our previous conversation, a lot of the things I cook is because my mum taught me how to cook it, or my nan taught me how to cook it, and then maybe as I've become a dietitian, I make adjustments. So, for example, today I made some mince, and I make a really big pot of mince, and I chop up so much vegetables, put it in there. To be honest, it disappears, and then I also put lentils in there, and that's just so I know that the kids are getting that good fibre, and then things of that nature. And I would say that's definitely now our family culture, because that's how mommy's mince is always taste, and we use it to go on rice. Oh, and also kidney beans. I put that on there in there. We use it to go on rice. We use it to put in wraps. I normally freeze a batch for the days when I'm just sort of like running late, and I know that I'm not going to be able to cook when I get home from work. So you know, it's and that's my norm. And I mean, it always has lentils in there, where I never grew up eating lentils. But it's just we all know it's good for the gut health, and so on and so forth. So just introducing healthier options, healthier alternatives, but still having your traditional foods. I think it's really important. I mean, let's use fried dumplings for example. So you'd have fried dumplings, and they can be made in so many different ways. Some people put flour, water, salt, knead them, fry them, and they're good to go. Some people put flour instead of the water. They'll put milk. Yeah, gives you that a bit more of a creamier taste. Knead them, fry them. Some people put flour, milk, butter. You shorten it. Yeah, can you see?
Oh,
um, make them, knead them, fry them. So you can see there's so many different steps to make the same thing. And I get it. The more fat that you're going to put in an item, the nicer it's going to taste. But do we have to make it like that all the time? Yeah, because if you do it the first stage that I said, they do still taste nice, you know. Um, but if you get used to the fat loaded alternative, and that's the recipe that you filter down,
mm,
then that's going to become the norm, and it's
yeah,
not going to be supporting anyone. So, yeah. Mm.
excellent, excellent. Is there an Eloise dietitian recipe book?
Oh
And
no,
if not, when is it coming?
I'm not, it's not me actually. It's the husband. So he's a diet. My husband's a dietitian, and but he was a chef before he was a dietitian. So I have learned so much from him. You know how to make things, why you put things together as well. Because I was brought up from that traditional perspective of cooking. This is what you do. That's it. I don't understand why, but this is what you do. But he can understand, why you put a salt, or why you put a bit of sugar, or why, this is too acidic and it needs to. So yeah, so I'm always admiring. He's the one that needs to get a cookbook, and then I can put the diabetes spin to it.
Yes. What's his name?
His name's Dietitian Chef K on Instagram.
Dietitian
Yeah,
Chef K.
so, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So very, very chefy when you go onto his account, because he absolutely loves cooking. So a combination of both of us, I guess the kids are living their best life, to be honest.
Absolutely. This is a very well fed household. This is great.
Which comes with a grocery bill.
So earlier on, we were talking a little bit about health awareness
Mhm.
and knowing about, you know, having awareness at every
Yeah.
stage,
Mm.
accessing results. You gave the great top tip of using the NHS app
Yeah.
and connecting it to your GP practice,
Mm.
having those conversations, asking why,
Yeah.
almost being that bring out the inner 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
Wow.
Why?
Mm.
um, you also mentioned that you had some top tips as
Yes.
well for some sort of health awareness. Um, I would love to hear those if that's okay,
Yeah,
please.
of course. So the first thing that I would say, and I don't know if this is going to sound really geeky, but get yourself a notebook and call it your health notebook. Yeah. So when you go to your dietitian's appointment and the diet, you're together, you've created a plan and you've got some goals to work towards, just jot them down. Yeah. Not an essay, just a couple of words, just jot them down. And having that information go from just the mind onto paper is now cementing these goals that you're now trying to create. And you can use this notepad to jot down your results. So on May the 12th, H3A1C results were da da da. And then when you go next time, you can compare. Obviously, you can have the NHS app as well, but having this notepad, you can use it for all sorts of things. If you've got any questions, you will maybe watching TV and I don't know, the Libra advertisement comes up and you think, oh, I want one of those. What do they do? You can jot it down. When you go see your diabetes specialist nurse, you can have a conversation. And all it's doing now is informing you and keeping all that information in one little area. And for people of our community, again, I think it's really important because there's an element of, I think, like nerves that sometimes come about when you go to the appointments and you just don't want to be perceived as um silly or uneducated or anything of that nature. When I did my research, and it was on the title was, does the Christian faith influence the management and prevention of type 2 diabetes? And from that, a lot of people were explaining that, when you go to the doctors, you sort of like you're sitting upright, you're like yes or no sort of scenario. But sitting in this research focus groups that I did, and having a coordinator like myself who looked like them, sounded like them, they could just relax and ask the questions that they perceived was silly, and no question was silly, and no question is ever silly. So yeah, top tip, get a notepad. Get a notepad, and it's going to be your everything in regards to your health, where you can jot it all down. If you can, bring a friend. Bring a friend to your appointments. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Was you not? Yeah, bring a friend. Ring a friend.
Okay.
Do you remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You could ring a friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, showing my age. Yeah, bring a friend. The reason why I say bring a friend is because when you go to appointments, I always feel that there's only so much information that is absorbed. And especially if the news isn't as you would have wanted it to have been. Because diabetes is a lifelong condition. I pause because we could debate that, but yeah, it's a lifelong condition, and you're going to be managing it. Even if you put it in remission, you're still managing diabetes. Okay, so if you've now gone to your appointment and you've been given a lot of information, so it could be HbA1c is consistently elevated, they've said, right, we need to start you on insulin, and then they've given you all this information about insulin. There's only so much you're going to take. Yeah. Or if you've seen the dietitian, they've given you an example, you've discussed, what is a carbohydrate, and, what has an impact on your blood sugars or glycemic index, and, how it's having that, influx on your glucose levels. Then you see them in 6 months' time. Half of that information that you gave them has now just, it's just disappeared. So if your friend is there, you can have a conversation, you can have a discussion, friend, partner, husband, wife, and together you can gather a bit more information from it. So yeah, I also think
that makes perfect sense, because appointments can sometimes be quite emotionally charged, can't they?
Yeah.
Healthcare settings aren't always the most pleasant places to be.
No. Yeah. So, but I know it's not always possible. You know yourself very well. If you can't bring a friend, and you need to slow that appointment down, slow down that information that you're receiving, take a breath, feel confident to do so. Healthcare providers really like it. Clinicians really like it when someone takes control of their, and they're empowered, and they're informed, and they are, really engaged in regards to their own health. So yeah, take control, bring a friend. Then thirdly, I would say, I've been referring to, when you look down at your plate, can you identify the macros? Yeah. So I would always say to people, that is our foundation. That is your foundation. Understanding what a macro is. Yeah. So what is a carbohydrate? What is a protein? What is fiber? Yeah. Because and also how they all have an impact on your blood sugars. Once you've got that education and that foundation has been built correctly, I mean, you don't build a house on a bad foundation, do you? So once that's been laid and you understand that, that can now influence every single meal you have. Yeah. So it could be breakfast, which I find a lot of people struggle with. Yeah, because it's normally carbohydrate heavy, and protein intake, you're lucky if you get an egg, 6 grams of protein or something of that nature. But once you start understanding it, you can start building on that. So it could be, right, I've worked out a really good breakfast. I'm going to write it down. This is my option 1. And it could be you stick it inside the cupboard of the cupboard in your, in your larder, and right, it takes away that thinking, that constant, oh goodness me, what should I have? What should I have to eat? What's healthy? What's good for me? What's clean? What's not? Yeah. So understanding what's on your plate and how it has an impact will influence your decisions on every meal that you have, even your snacks. Yeah,
that's a tool. Absolutely, that's a. I'm writing these down as you're talking, because these are tools that they go anywhere. They apply to any meal.
Any
They
meal,
can go to
any
any
culture.
setting.
Yeah, yeah. So you could be out at an event and you're like, right, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to go up and get myself some food. And then now it might have an impact on, do you have your rice and peas, your fried dumpling, your plantain, a slice of hard dough bread? Because all that's just carbohydrates. Yeah. And then your meat and a little side salad. Now you'll be like, okay, maybe I need to, I don't need to have the hard dough bread. I don't, or I can have half of that. It's going to really have that positive impact on your decision making. And in turn, it's going to improve your outcomes, your diabetes results. But yeah,
It's a universal tool.
yeah, for everybody, every culture, anywhere it can be used. And then if you do have meals that are like combined, so for example, a lasagna, yeah, so you've got meat, you've got pasta, again, it's just understanding, okay, so this has got carbs in and it's got protein in. Maybe I'll just have a little bit of salad on the side, and I know that this is now a balanced meal. It's complete. Yeah.
I love that can come back into like the notebook, can't it? To
Mm.
say these are my top meals.
Yeah, yeah. So that notepad becomes your everything. So yeah, you can make it pretty. Get yourself a nice pretty one, not boring. Then
Mm.
I feel like this is a bit clinical, but let's go for it. Try and build a routine where you go for a walk after your meals. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I say that's a bit clinical because I know that it's something that we champion in the diabetes world. About 10 minutes after your meal, try and do a 15-minute walk to bring those blood sugars down. But you don't have to go outside and go for a walk. So it could be you've eaten, you've relaxed, you've had a bit of a natter. Right, I'm going to get up. Let me tidy the plates, bring them in the kitchen, tidy up a little bit, and just get yourself moving. Yeah, because what we're trying to do is we are trying to bring those blood sugars down. We are trying to stabilize those peaks and those troughs. And it's such an easy way, free and easy way of doing it. It's not the same as having that burden of having to take a metformin or take a dapagliflozin or some sort of medication. It's something that's in your own remit that you can do, but it can make such a really big impact. So going for a walk after would just be the chef's kiss.
Absolutely fantastic. And I think just for our audience, it's any type of movement that gets the blood pumping
Yeah.
will lower glucose levels.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use, I always think about bang for buck.
Yeah.
If you want your bang for buck,
Mm-hmm.
put that in after eating carbohydrates because it's going to be the most effective. I mean, we're really narrowing the view of exercise here because exercise or any activity
Yeah.
has benefits beyond glucose management.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's just that it's de-stressing, it's good for the joints,
Exactly.
it's all those feel-good hormones, and
Yeah.
just a benefit that it lowers glucose levels as well.
Yeah. And I think from a cultural perspective, that is not something that we do, going out for walks as frequently as we probably should. You have a large meal and then you get that sort of slump. But just trying to be, as you said, just trying to be active. It goes back to the why. I think if people understood the power of just that movement after eating, I think that would really have such a positive impact on the development of type 2 diabetes, the management of type 2 diabetes. And yeah, that's I think that's definitely the key. And if I also add one extra bonus one,
Yeah.
it would be, I'm assuming everybody brushes their teeth every day. Yeah, I hope you do. And if you do, right, we want to have that sort of layered approach. Okay, so something that you already do every single day, and I want you to add something like 10 squats to that. Something that's resistance bearing. Yeah. So it could be 10 press ups against the wall. You don't have to be there down on the floor, but something that's just resistance. And it becomes fun. something that, you're not thinking about it as like I'm having to put on my gym kit and go and pump some weight, but just sort of really activating some of those larger muscles in the body. Um, you could do 10. You could do 3 sets of 10 if you want to. But again, what we're trying to do here is use up some of that excess glucose that's in the system, but in a leisurely way. So yeah.
I love a bonus tip.
Yeah.
That's
Squat
fantastic.
and floss.
Squat and floss. Excellent. And it's so what I've written down here is health notebook, which I'm going to call journal of joy.
Oh,
And
I'm stealing that.
and then bring a friend.
Yeah.
That's you got me with the call a friend. That's very good. Identify macros, the universal tool,
Yeah.
movement after eating, and the bonus is resistance routine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic.
And I mean, the resistance routine, I think if we get out of our head sometimes, it's not as complicated as it needs to be. So I have a lady that I've worked with, an elderly lady, and she has a really big old Victorian house. So what I've suggested that she does, she's got a bottle of water, big bottle of water, and it's at the front door. So her hallway's really long, and her goal is to move that bottle down to the kitchen and then back to the front door every day. Yeah. And then it's something that she can build on. Again, that's now resistance exercising, isn't it? And I just want people to take away that extra noise that you get, like, oh goodness, I need to exercise, or I need, we can do that within our everyday actions, and it just doesn't have to be stressful. Doesn't have to be stressful. Yeah.
Easy exercise. I love
Yeah.
that. I
Easy,
love that.
easy.
Oh, Eloise, I could keep talking to you forever, but I'm so conscious of time. If people want to find you, where can people find you, please?
Yeah, so I do have a website, elouisesimpson.co.uk. Not as active on there as I need to be. And then I have my Instagram page, which is diabetes Elouise. Sorry, dietitian Elouise. Yeah, I've got diabetes on my head. Dietitian Elouise, um, where you can contact me on there. I'd normally put, healthy tips, ideas, and things of that nature. But yeah, you can definitely contact me there. Or if it's a little bit more formal, you can contact me on my email, which is simpsonelouise@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful insight, your expertise, your
Thank
knowledge.
you.
To all of our attendees, thank you for coming. To
Thank you.
listeners, thank you for listening. Please make sure to go and follow Eloise and get in contact. If you do have any questions after today, then please contact We Nutrition. That's We Nutrition UK on Instagram and Facebook, or hello@wenutrition.co.uk. And if you are listening on a platform that allows you to follow or subscribe, please do, because we've got loads of great content coming. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.